Hello everyone, you're watching Altek2k Gaming. In this one we're going to go over the basics of crafting. We're going to cover items and how mods work, and then we're going to go over the basic currency that crafts those items. This will be the beginning of a series of videos on how to craft. Let's get started. Here we have a normal carved wand. I've gone to great lengths to make sure these are all pretty much identical apart from their rarity. So the first item we're going to look at is normal. This basically has an implicit modifier, which basically says 14% increased spell damage. And this is given by the base of the item itself. If we go now to a magic item, you can see this one has the same as before, but it also has +1 to level of all chaos spell skill gems. And if we go now to our rare item, we can see that this has a whole host of mods. And we've also got a unique version, which we'll talk about a little bit differently because they don't follow the same rules as everything else. Now, unique items are somewhat special in that the only craft you can really do on them is change the numbers on them where they're flexible. So on this one, the minion deals 58% increased damage is rollable between 50 and 70. So there's a piece of currency that will change those values, which we'll get to in a little while. You can also change the unique completely, but you cannot change these mods. They're fixed on the unique item. That's what makes them unique. Before we start crafting, there's something very important we need to do. Press escape, go to options, and then go to UI. Scroll down a little bit, and under items we've got advanced mod descriptions. Make sure this is ticked. It's off by default. So what does that do? When we hover over an item, if we press the Alt key, it gives us some extra information. So the extra information it's giving us here is what each mod is, and also the item level of the item. So all these ones have item level 13, and the unique one has an item level of 75. Okay, so currency. Let's start with quality first. To quality a weapon, you use a whetstone. If it's white, you'll see that it takes 4, 1 per 5%, up to 20. If it's blue, it's going to take 10, because it raises it 2% per level. And then these ones are 1 apiece. So you can see you really want to put whetstones on an item when they're in the white state, if at all possible. And you'll have noticed while we were increasing the quality on those, the actual physical damage modifier on it was increasing. Now on most ones, that's not very useful. But on a proper melee weapon, that's much more meaningful and can actually make a real big difference to the weapon's damage. We have 3 currencies here: Orb of Transmutation, Orb of Alteration, and Orb of Augmentation. These are all designed to work with magic items. So the first of these will take our normal item and it will turn it to magic. We just reverse that with an Orb of Scouring. Orb of Scouring basically resets an item to its default, back to normal. Now if we try and use this on it, it's going to fail. Target is not magic. And this, same thing. 10% increased attack speed. Pretty good on this one because this one has a high attack speed. It's now 1.65. What do these other currencies do? This currency adds a mod. What are mods? So let's talk about this. An item is split up into 2 things: implicit modifiers and explicit modifiers. Now, an item can have a number of implicits, but normally just 1, unless it's corrupted. And with explicit modifiers, we can have up to 6. 3 prefixes and 3 suffixes. And those prefixes and suffixes have different things. Suffixes are more defensive, whereas prefixes are more offensive. So we can see here we got 3 prefixes and 2 suffixes. That means that this item isn't full and we can roll another suffix on it. Now for blue items, the explicits can have 1 prefix and 1 suffix. So you'll see here we got a prefix, we can have another suffix. So how can we add a suffix? For this we use augmentation. You'll see it says augments a magic item with a new random modifier. So if we put that on there, now that looks like it's given us 2 suffixes, but that's impossible. If we click on it, you'll see that that suffix that's just been rolled is a 2-part suffix on one thing, so it gives you light radius and increased global accuracy. Now if you're not happy with the roll you got, you can change it by using an alteration. And this basically just changes the mod on the item by constantly re-rolling. That's given as a prefix and a suffix, which can actually happen on Transmute. Transmute creates a magic item from a normal and adds between 1 and 2 explicit modifiers. So let's roll this until we get something we like. +1 to fire spell gems is nice, and then we're going to augment again to put a suffix on it. Intelligence. That's pretty good for mana and energy shield, but it's a really low roll. You'll see that each modifier has a tier value. The +1 has a tier 1 value, and the intelligence has a tier 9 value. The higher the tier number normally means the worse that particular roll is. And the level of tier you can have on an item is defined by the item level. A low item level will tend to have weaker modifiers on it. And that's to stop you rolling a brilliant item the moment you start the game. So there are 3 magic item modifiers. On top of this, we also have some rare item crafting currency, and we'll go over that in just a little while. But first, let's go back to quality. Quality increases the chance of dealing with links on the item, Now you can change the number of sockets on an item using a jeweler's orb. Now all these have full numbers of sockets and this one's corrupted. You cannot change a corrupted item, and you cannot take an item above its maximum number of sockets. We've only got a 2 link there, and only sockets linked together will actually benefit from support gems. This one, if you put a support gem in here, will do nothing for these two. So you really want these 3 linked, and that's gone. But basically the quality increases the chance of getting higher link numbers. If you decide you want red, blue, blue for instance, you then use chromatics to change the colour and we hit it first time. So that's what these do, they change the colour of an item. When it comes to determining the colours that are going to roll on these items, you need to look at the requirements. So it says requires level 12, 47 int. Now what int means is that it's more likely to roll blue, dexterity is green, and strength is red. So by choosing the requirements of the base, you can more accurately predict what colours are going to roll. All the other colours are classed as off colours and are much harder to get. I do have a video on reaching off colours, I'll link it in the description. This is designed to increase the quality of an item that isn't a weapon. So a piece of armour for instance. Now all my stuff is already quality, except for the belts and rings. Now your belts and rings don't use the same thing, they use catalysts, and we'll talk about those in another video. Now flasks can also be upgraded using glassblowers baubles. Now this won't increase the link, but what it does do is increase the number of seconds the flask lasts. So you can see 7.2 seconds there. And then this increases the quality of a gem, and quality on a gem can do all kinds of different things. So for instance, if we take our Ancestral Protector and put that on it, you'll see the quality goes up by 1 at a time. There is a crafting recipe to allow you to do this with just 1 item, but that's outside the scope of this video. And then we also have quality for maps. This is a map. If we put quality on it, you'll see that as it's white, it goes up by 5% a turn. If it's blue, it will go up by 2% a turn, and if it's rare or above, it'll go up by 1% per turn, like the other items in the game. Okay, now like other things, you can actually craft a map. And we're going to show you this now by going straight to rare. And for this, we can use an Orb of Alchemy. An Orb of Alchemy turns any normal item straight to rare, skipping the blue step, and it will give it at least 3 modifiers. We got 4 modifiers on it. Now on maps, increasing the rarity increases the item quantity and the item rarity. So you'll see that these jumped up to 78 and 34%. The more mods you have on a map, the higher the item quantity and rarity will be. Now, there's a chance when you corrupt one of these that it will change the map, but also there's a chance that it will actually give it all 8 mods that it needs. And in this case, we did that. So now this has jumped up to 118%. So there we just used a Orb of Alchemy to make it rare, and then a Val Orb to corrupt it. This map can't be changed anymore. If we use another currency on it, target is corrupted, we can't change it. Okay, so these ones. Let's go to rarity. We're going to scrape this one off, which that's a fairly decent roll for a new character. I don't really want to, but we're going to do it anyway. So it's back to its default. Now, you can also have a chance of turning something either magic, rare, or even unique by using an Orb of Chance. So let's try this on here. And it's moved it rare for us. It could have moved it magic, it could have moved it unique. Now a Chaos Orb, now this is the basic currency of the game. So not many people do this, but what you can do is just spam the item with it. And you'll see it just randomly shuffles all those modifiers to different ones. And that's called Chaos Spamming. Now you can buy quite a lot of items with Chaos. So this is only a really good idea if you've got a high item base that can actually roll decent mods. Now the other thing we have is this Orb of Binding. Now what this does is it will take a normal item and completely link it. So this thing here, if we turn this normal again, and also there you'll see that this one's got a weird mod on it. This is an enchantment, and enchantments come from the lab. But if we stick an Orb of Binding on this, it's going to roll it but also fully 4-link the item. Do not use this on a 6-link. If you use this on a 6-link, you're going to lose sockets. Don't want to do that. Okay, so this makes things rare. This can make things rare, but not as guaranteed. These are much cheaper, so you can spam these. And these will wipe things off. Now, these are quite rare. You'll notice that this adds something to an item, but only a magic item. If we try to add another mod on there, it's not going to allow us. Now, if you have an extremely good item, you can use an Exalted Orb. And this is called Slamming. And it will slam a missing modifier onto the item. Now, Exalted Orbs are incredibly expensive. They can be worth up to 100 chaos, which can buy you some really nice stuff. However, in the interest of completing this guide, we're going to have to use it, which I really don't want to do. Okay, let's do it. So, you can see we have 2 prefixes and 3 suffixes. Let's slam it. We now have 3 prefixes, and 3 suffixes. You can see now that Exalted Orb could only do one thing, and that is roll a prefix. And actually, that's not bad. It's given us +1 to level of all fire skill gems. We've got a fire over time multiplier, so it could be reasonable early game. Yeah, really expensive. You wouldn't normally do that unless you're trying to get the perfect item. The opposite of an Exalted Orb is this thing, and this will work on both a rare item and a magic item. And basically, it picks one mod at random and takes it off. I want to get rid of this +17 to maximum mana. It's probably going to take off the +1 to fire, because that's not what I want. We got it. That's off. Okay, so now if we go to our crafting bench and put in our wand, you'll see that we have an open prefix slot, because we've got 3 suffixes and an open prefix. So now we can put something much bigger on here. Basically, this is the cost it's going to cost you to guarantee this item roll. And this will roll whatever it's between this value here. We're going to put on fire damage to spells for 4 chaos. Actually, no, we're not. We're going to do the cheaper version for 2 alks. And there you go. This is probably pretty good now to level with as a fire damage wander. I will keep that because it's not terrible. And I spent an X on it. It's the most expensive beginner wand I've ever seen. And we could corrupt it, but that could completely brick the item and make it unusable. Here is one we corrupted earlier. Normally the implicit on a carved wand is increased spell damage. So this one has it, this one has it, and even the unique one has it. However, if we troll this on here, it has a chance of changing the implicit, and in this case it's done it. It's changed it from 14% increased spell damage to 17% in critical strike chance. And there's various different implicits you can get on items, which we'll talk about more in the next video. Okay, so this implicit, you'll see if we go into our view again, you'll see that it goes between 11 and 15. So we haven't quite got a perfect roll on this item. So actually, let's try and make this one perfect, as we've spent so much money on it already. And for this, we use Blessed Orbs. This changes the magnitude of an implicit modifier. And we're using a lot, but we got to 15. Now, they're fairly cheap, so I normally increase all the implicits on any item that I'm taking into the endgame. Now, just as a Blessed Orb changes the numeric values of an implicit, a Divine Orb will change the numeric values of an explicit, or all the explicits. It actually re-rolls each one of them. This one isn't so full, so it's 58 and 21 out of 30, so let's have a go at this one. And there we go. Minions have 30% increased movement speed instead of 21, so that was a positive experience. It can also go down, of course. Okay, so now we know all about items and we've used all the base currency. We're just going to cover one more piece of currency, which is this Ancient Orb. And an Ancient Orb basically takes any unique item and changes it to another one in its class. So this should change this to another wand. And it did. Now this is also really expensive, but you can see we can roll pretty much any unique wand in the game to actually use it. Now people do try to use this on belts to get a headhunter. Now flasks can also have buffs through these instilling and enkindling orbs, and they give them a random trigger. So for instance, we can force one of these flasks to activate when something happens. So for this one, if we start bleeding, we could try and get it to trigger. If I take a savage hit, I'm going to activate this flask. If we use our life flask, it's now going to activate this flask. That's what we wanted. So whenever we start bleeding now, this flask will automatically kick in and take bleeding off us. Now what this one does is increases the effect of the flask. So this one, where we got movement speed, if we enkindle it, we get 63% more effect of this movement. When you put an enkindling orb on something, the flask will not recharge while it's in use, so you do get some downtime. So this one's all been about base currency and getting good basic items throughout the game. In the next video, we're going to do something more advanced. We're going to talk about how you can target crafts on an item. So say we need increased chaos damage over time or increased fire damage, we'll show you various ways that you can get those crafts when you start crafting an item. I hope you found this guide useful. If you have, then please tickle that like button. It'll like it a lot. And with that, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.